Hi, I'm Antonio Mora. A free press and accurate, honest journalism are crucial to the American democratic process. Without well-informed citizens, our representative government can't function properly. Journalism's failure is no less than a full-blown crisis for democracy. And make no mistake about it, in our polarized society, journalism is failing all too often to deliver the objective, credible national reporting we all need to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. At the core of the editorial decline is media partisanship, which has become the rule rather than the exception. When reporters pick sides, they are much more likely to make mistakes, spread misinformation, and deliver news that's just plain unfair. No wonder trust in all types of news media is crashing among all Americans, although it is especially pronounced among Republicans. However, a new Morning Consult survey found liberals are finding even left-leaning media less credible. The same is happening with the attitudes of conservatives toward right-leaning sources. I'm not talking about opinion shows or opinion pages. Examples are everywhere in newspapers and on TV news shows that claim to provide you with straight, objective, hard news. This week, Meet the Press had to apologize for this.
Well, history's written by the winner, so it largely depends on who's writing the history.
I was struck, Peggy, by the cynicism of the answer. It's a correct answer, but he's the Attorney General. He didn't make the case that he was upholding the rule of law. He was almost admitting that, yeah, this is a political job.
The not-so-little problem is that Attorney General Barr said exactly the opposite of what Chuck Todd accused him of doing.
History's written by the winner, so it largely depends on who's writing the history. But I think a fair history would say that it was a good decision because it upheld the rule of law.
How does that happen? Would this have happened to a president that the media was inclined to like? Or, as conservatives like to point out, why do these errors only seem to happen when they put Trump and his supporters in a negative light? The damage is huge. It automatically gives Trump the ammunition to label the media fake news and gives his supporters the ability to defend the president when anything negative about him is reported. On the other hand, right-leaning outlets not only slant their information to favor Trump, they pick clear pro-Trump narratives that they hammer home repeatedly, giving short shrift to stories that portray him negatively. If you watch and read only right-leaning sources, you probably would have thought that we were seeing a national uprising with massive protests everywhere demanding the country reopen immediately. You would not have heard that few of those protests involved more than a couple of hundred people, or that survey after survey has found that Americans were much more worried about public health than the economy. Since the protests started, those numbers have started to shift. But even this week, a political Morning Consult poll showed Americans think the country is reopening too quickly by a 3-to-1 margin over those who think we are reopening too slowly. It's much closer among Republicans, but 31% think we're moving too fast versus 27% who think it's too slow. 37% think it's just right. The double standards are stunning on both sides. While mainstream and left-leaning media obsessed for years over anything relating to the probe into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, we heard crickets when it came time to report on how the FBI might have entrapped Michael Flynn. Right-leaning media is all over that story, often putting aside that, entrapped or not, Flynn lied to the FBI. And the behavior of Obama administration officials, including Biden, now often takes precedence on Fox News over big COVID-19 news. That better fits their narrative. The Tara Reade story is even more damning. With few exceptions, for more than 2 weeks, her serious allegations about sexual misbehavior by Joe Biden could only be found in right-leaning media. And in interview after interview, so-called hard-hitting anchors and reporters all magically ignored asking Biden about Reade. Compare that to allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, or Trump himself, which were picked up instantaneously by mainstream and left-leaning outlets. All accusations were treated seriously and answers were demanded. Michael Avenatti, now a convicted felon, was allowed to say whatever he wanted for hours on end. So much Kool-Aid has been imbibed at CNN that reporters even went as far as attacking David Muir of mainstream ABC News for not being liberal enough and failing to use an interview as an opportunity to prosecute Trump. Since when are journalists supposed to be prosecutors? But that's from a network where supposed hard news reporters have no problem describing Trump as ranting and raving, or where producers put up a banner on screen saying the costs of Trump's amateur hour administration. In his controversial 2001 bestseller Bias, Bernie Goldberg exposed liberal bias in mainstream media. However, he always sustained that there was no conspiracy to intentionally slant the news toward the left. As a longtime network correspondent and anchor myself, I always agreed that bias resulted from groupthink, not a concerted effort to frame a liberal narrative. Goldberg, however, has changed his mind. In a recent column, he wrote that he now believes there actually is a conspiracy. While he still mostly focuses on liberal bias, he writes, "All day long, CNN and MSNBC play up negative stories about the president while Fox plays them down. And all day long, Fox plays up good news about the president while CNN and MSNBC play it down or ignore such stories altogether." Goldberg should have paid more attention to the right and Fox News, one of his former employers. Just this week, Fox went on an anti-Dr. Fauci tear in show after show. Don't tell me this wasn't an agreed-to narrative. If not, they sure don't have many original thinkers. I could spend hours listing examples on both sides, in print and TV, of slanted stories, important news that's ignored, information that is overemphasized to fit a chosen narrative, and sloppy journalism that always seems to damage the other side, not one's own. If we in the media allow partisanship to take precedence over journalistic standards and don't even try to hide our biases anymore, what moral authority do we have to claim to be purveyors of the truth and to hold the powerful to account? The American people deserve better.